the proper discernment, I believe that you can learn how to defend yourself from psychic warfare on the internet through videos on YouTube, for example, or videos elsewhere, podcasts, or blogs, written articles, things of that nature, online testimonials, social media. There is so much information out there. I just don't think that people are applying the information necessarily in the right manner. But I remember several years ago looking at the future of YouTube and the types of content, depths of content regarding certain issues like protecting your psyche, or just simply said, protecting your mind. And that would include basic cognitive function. Without a doubt, mental illness seems to be increasingly an issue in modern society, not just amongst the homeless, but amongst the so-called regular, normal population. But the thing is, how normal is it to be well adjusted to a sick society? So I would say that there are some directions we need to look at of a spiritual nature, solutions of a spiritual sort. You know, away from looking at pharmaceuticals. You see, a lot of this stuff is labeled schizophrenia, the idea of psychic warfare or psychic attack, and that's fairly unfortunate because it's a topic that womankind has tackled for thousands of years, and that's not by accident. So there's a number of different things that I'm going to talk about. Consider this an introductory video. You know, this is not professional medical advice or counseling, nor is this necessarily the guide to protecting yourself against psychic attack or psychic warfare. But these are just things that I've come to learn, my general opinion. For example, this is a very important point. A lot of people on the internet believe that the government is gang stalking them, personally gang stalking them, that they as an individual, right, have a team of 50 or a team of 100. Now, I have no doubt that something may be haunting some of these individuals. Back in Portland, I recall a lot of people on the streets screaming to themselves and seemingly in some sort of a battle with something that they perceived to be attacking them. I didn't necessarily look at them thinking that they were all crazy. I would certainly see the connection between homelessness, poverty, despair, lower emotions, perhaps being an alcoholic, not having a shower, and those people being more susceptible to being attacked by demons or archons to the Gnostics or other terms to other groups. I believe the Watchers is another term. Looking at the book over there from Carlos Castaneda. Also, other terms come to mind. But the subject's been written about in many, many books. And it's also been the subject of science fiction. We can see archons, for example, right? Modern Gnostic mythos in movies like The Matrix, in movies like The Adjustment Bureau, in movies like Dark City. And to some people, these are just movies. But when we, if you will, read between the lines and see the Gnostic truths, in particular with Neo, that comes to mind the movie The Matrix, and the concept of him believing in himself to do what needed to be done. You can even say to activate to his real self or powerful self, you know, and then we have these things that are built into the movie. For example, Neo is faced with the reality of the Matrix world or his Matrix self versus his real self. And all of this is applicable to our world. But to a lot of people, they're invested in some of those themes being a movie and only in a movie. And I suspect, and I'm just giving my opinion, I'll give my opinion for the remainder of the hour, that it's a way that people avoid responsibility by saying that's just a movie that has no meaning. In fact, there is no spiritual meaning. And I would say that there is. You know, we are at this time in human history where there is a wealth of information out there in this day and age where a lot of people have been crying about censorship or claiming censorship where there is no censorship. Sometimes I wonder if they even really know what censorship is. We have a wealth of information that at times seems buried by all the disinformation that even people with conspiratorial like mindsets don't even realize is disinformation. The idea of intelligence agencies working together, i.e., CIA, Russia, working together, not against each other, to destabilize the Western world through dramatically altering the Facebook algorithms. Why is this complicated for people to understand? So, there seems to be a blueprint. I would say we have a wealth of information. Look at what they've done to divide our society on the internet. And we can observe that and see how pointless it is. We can see how self-destructive it is. So by becoming aware of it and not participating in it, you can help protect your mind from that psychic warfare, which is an energy signature of constant fighting. And there are people out there, no doubt, right, that want you to fight with them. Oh, notice there's a mistake where people confuse nonviolence and kindness for weakness. So there are people out there that will go out seeking prey on the internet. But what are they getting out of it? You know, the attacking, the trolling. It's a sense of getting energy out of causing pain. But that doesn't really make any sense unless you're an energy vampire. And so the internet, in a way, and including certain personalities, we talk about certain deceivers in the alternative media that are very, very large. There's a fair amount of psychological warfare that is obviously combined with spiritual warfare. When we talk about the likes of certain individuals that are clear deceivers in the alternative media. While they may claim to be Christians, we can see their satanic leanings. And so the question is, how much sense does it make to even continue to consume content from those individuals if we know that spiritually they're under a spell, or worse yet, possessed? So when we start becoming aware of certain things, certain individuals that we believe are serving the agenda, and that means media organizations, CNN, Fox News, then why keep watching them? And so that's something that people have overlooked. You know, in our own pop culture, we can go back to the 50s and see in Hollywood, there's always been the joke about the person saying, I can't be hypnotized, and the watch dropping down, the person going, oh, I'm hypnotized. There's a lot of people out there that think that they need to believe in the concept of targeted individuals to be a targeted individual. And the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of people out there that are acting like targeted individuals, like somehow they, along with groups of other human beings, not overnight, but over a period in time, begin to say the exact same talking points without the cognitive ability to step in and go, wait a minute, we're all saying the same thing. Like, hey, I know like we all agree and everything, but we're all saying the same thing. How about saying the same thing in a different way? But no, we're all like saying the same slogans. So at some point, right, the higher self should be able to step in and go, whoa, 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 notice your patterns. So what I would say is to observe your thought patterns and forms. And you can literally launch a psychic attack against yourself by having negative thought forms that are directed at others. So thinking hatred, anger, jealousy, envy, those are not good emotions. I try to steer away from those within myself. But as men today, right, we are brainwashed by this society to constantly be in envy and jealousy of our brother. That brings me to another point. One of the things that I've noticed in a lot of videos regarding psychic protection, many of them are made by African Americans in the city today, like urban environments. Like one woman was like, near Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, just outside of downtown in South Central. So what they talk about a lot, and I can see the dark side of it, so there's a light and a dark. There's Tommy Sotomayor, who calls the black women beasties, and I find that to be offensive, even if he's criticizing ghetto behavior. Let's just spit it out there. I think that he's marketing himself to people that are very judgmental and like to engage in that ghetto talk. But let me tell you what you're not going to hear from Fox News. The positive black speakers that are out there that I'm seeing rise on YouTube that aren't being given the attention that they deserve. They're talking about things that they're experiencing in their own communities or ghettos. When a brother or sister rises up and they start doing something for themselves and not gang-banging around and not drinking and smoking and having a bunch of kids, people are hating on them. Somebody makes a YouTube channel and they start discussing certain things and they start going against the grain and people start hating on them or making certain assumptions. And there are things that are like specific, right, to them that they're sharing, but I can see that within society. And I think that's the greater point. That's something that people should contemplate. When someone raises up in their frequency, and I mentioned in yesterday's video, this brought up some anger in someone whose home I was visiting. Just the idea that the Creator could be testing us. So psychic warfare is part of it. There's the power of suggestion. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Sleep, consume, obey. Become addicted, to digital media. Nothing wrong with digital media and being a part of it. Right? We have to keep certain addictions at bay, or we may go through certain phases. We also got to take time for ourselves, pull back from the false light, pull back from the negative thoughts, right? A little bit of fear, hey, it's necessary, if you will, for survival. It's the paranoia run awry without restraint that leads to psychosis. That's the issue. But by the way, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that they're your friends. You see, so as you start stepping into who you truly are, you're going to see even those closest to you, in some cases, coming against you. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's natural. There's a time and a place for people to be attracted to each other as friends, kind of like astrology when planets are in retrograde, or the opposite of retrograde, like attraction, or being drawn to each other, or alignment. So sometimes we're in alignment. Sometimes I would say that we're in a retrograde phase. I'm not deep into astrology, but I do think that we are affected by the many celestial events. Bringing me to another very important point that isn't often mentioned. And I think as time goes on, you're going to have access to more information about not only psychic warfare, how to defend yourself, but certain periods in which it seems that there is a breakout in a mass hysteria. Do you know what I'm talking about? When it just seems that everybody is going ape shit, but it doesn't last forever. So kind of like a plague, like a pandemic, but one of the mind. Where people almost act like they're under a spell. And I don't think that humankind as a whole, as a collective, is understanding of this, but the knowledge of this has been spoken about by members of mankind. Some call them seers, prophets, other shamans. But this timeless battle struggle of good and evil, right? Or as the Gnostics would refer to it, the battle between the aeons of the archons. Or Christianity, angels and demons. A battle of good and evil. And so, I believe that we're being tested here on this planet. And before that, there's a blackout. Before there's a blackout of technology and databases and all that's on YouTube. You have access now to download videos that are relevant to your own life, right? That relate to all this. What I have in my hand are several hard drives. This one is 100 gigabytes. This would have been a lot more expensive about 12 years ago. Probably like $5 or $10 today. I think this is probably free. This holds several terabytes. This goes for a PC and a Mac. This one from Mac only. I think I purchased this, I think at Wally World for $160 back in 2012. Still works. The point is not only do we have access to all this free information, when you think about defending yourself martial arts wise, there was a period in time where people were spending $30 on a VHS tape from Black Belt magazine. And now a lot of that same stuff is out there for free. Same stuff applies to some of this information. It's just that you have to use discernment. So this is a great way to back up your information. Podcasts, right? We'll talk about Coast to Coast in a minute. There's a light and a dark to everything. Wisdom is discerning between the difference. Those good programs and programs that might be implants. They're to implant you with a particular subconscious belief, whether the host knows that or not. So back up your information, right? Write your own story. That's also key to psychic self-defense and mental well-being and spiritual growth, to know your own truth and to know that you're not just, regurgitating information from others. It's very important for us to be tapped into our own truth, but we can access our own truth by being reminded of certain things, and that can come about by stumbling upon the right information. And I often liken it to puzzle pieces. Just like I have these different pieces of paper, and I don't know how I'm going to get through all of these different points, right? But this is an introduction. This is not professional dental medical advice. But I sure think that people should, before they start filling themselves up full of antidepressants, before people allow themselves to continue being an alcoholic for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or a sex addict, or a video game addict, or some other something. People should come to a point where they ask themselves, are my thoughts my own? Read my article if you haven't read it from 2005, Mass Media Mind Control Through Network TV, Are Your Thoughts Your Own? Okay, now there are more people that are actually talking about these things and speaking about these things, and we can store so much of this information shared by others in the most simplest of forms. I also want to do a shout out to Reclaim the Matrix, or Reprogram the Matrix, the YouTube channel. There's a lot of information that you can learn about over at his channel. One of the things that he was discussing that I echoed was the idea of being responsible for your own energy. When it comes to these periods where there's less light, where we're going from fall to winter to spring, and I've been thinking about it more, I would even say some of us have an even greater genetic disposition to be more sensitive when we're not exposed to as much sun. For myself personally, I think there's a reason why I move closer to the sun. Right now, I'm at about 8,000 feet. So certain days, there's that feeling when the sun is coming down and I'm sitting outside, I'm getting away from the false light, the computer, and I'm just letting the energy of the sun itself heal. There's a reason why elements of mankind, especially in ancient India, gazed at the sun and viewed the sun as a fuel source, as food, if you will. It's not about taking it as far as they've taken it, the point where they're fasting for weeks and months, but understanding that, and I was going to touch on that earlier. There are periods in which we're going to experience more of that supernatural energy because the sun powers, gives life to, and energizes more than just us. It does more than just get the juices flowing in a group of human beings on a Miami beach on a sunny day. You know what I mean? It activates other things. It activates solar panels, which powers up batteries, which can do things with electricity. We're electric beings, but are we the only electromagnetic beings? Are we only beings that are interacting with the electromagnetic spectrum? You know the answer to that. Oh, there's going to be different opinions. Oh, yes. We are alone in the universe. We are only, the sun is this big. Here's Earth. Here are all these planets, and here's the stuff that we can't even see. And that's just like our universe. What about like other universes or galaxies? So the ignorance is bliss. That is a statement, is a fallacy. But like propaganda or Fox News or CNN or the mainstream media or elements of the alternative media, they just keep catapulting the propaganda, expecting the people to believe it. And it works if people receive that propaganda at a rate that is often enough to keep them in that spell. And there are certain people out there that, again, are not cognitive of their own patterns. How they are another very important to protecting your mind against psychic warfare on the internet. So, listening to the mentally ill isn't good. You got to be careful in dealing with the mentally ill or speaking to the mentally ill. Okay, and I think this is something that people need to consider. But especially if that person has a radio show, but one could say mentally ill, another could say possessed, depending on their belief system, whether they're looking at it from the world of psychology, spirituality, religion. So people are going to look at Alex Jones from a different perspective, or other people from a different perspective. Right? But one could say that they're possessed, that they are agents of something, but it's happening from within themselves. It's not happening via a government agent dropping off a check. They're not technically an agent of the feds, but they're an agent of the matrix. Does that make sense? Looking at things spiritually, you're going to have people that are agents of the matrix, that are on the internet, that are being rewarded by the archons with fame, fortune, and their deepest carnal desires being fulfilled. All those things Satan will give his followers in this world. The demiurge to the Gnostics. Okay. Shaitan to the Muslims. Other terms throughout time to describe the great deceiver that is masqueraded as God, as the punishing God. And what some note could very well be the God of the Old Testament, the Abrahamic religions. An archon masquerading as the true creator. Also, people that come up against these long-held ideas within our society are often attacked. And they may not know why. And because of the disinformation within the New Age movement, which is often a honey trap, there's some things that I was going to say with regards to that, they can be implanted with a false subliminal concept or idea that it's their fault. You know, I remember when my mom was pretty involved in that. When I was attacked by some kids, drove up from Aurora and went up to Portland, and, I'm not even looking at it like, it was because they were black, but black in Portland during that time, acting like they're gangbangers, tough Crips and Bloods, that's different. So from a young age, I've always viewed the black thug as a black thug because of his environment, and separating that from someone else who's not a black thug. And I had that balanced viewpoint even while being pummeled or punched in the face, if that makes any sense. So, some people, something's happened to them where they were beat, and they ended up calling people from a particular part of the world the N-word. And that never happened to me. Even though, 5 times assaulted by black people. 5 times. So the ratio to white might even be greater or 50-50. But have I viewed other blacks that haven't assaulted me as just like them? No. I viewed everyone as an individual who's going to either go their own way, intellectually, spiritually, mind, body, and spirit, or just be like the rest. And to just be like the rest is a mob mentality. It could be a combination of an ethnicity and a color and a nationality and something else that's like this arbitrary personality. But it's not really real. It's all arbitrary. It's all personality. It's all ego. And ego, by the way, is more than having an inflated view of yourself. It's questioning yourself. It's doubting yourself. It's living in fear. If you're doubting yourself, right? Let's say you want to create a YouTube channel and you're doubting yourself, right? Because you're worried about what could happen, or, some people are, so they remain anonymous and they don't use their birth name. That's being stuck in ego too, by being afraid of who you are and not using your real name. If the government wanted to come get you, they would get you. All that information, your real identity, if you've ever linked your YouTube to an AdSense, has your real identity. So what are you really afraid of? Ego. The ego death would not be afraid to reveal who one really is, even if they're trolled and even if they're attacked. On the topic of trolling, and I don't normally read troll attacks, one came from China, and it seems to be a death threat to all of us Americans, and I'll make a separate video for that. But we got to protect ourselves from the psychic warfare that's out there that's all, nationalism. And I'm seeing the very things that I've warned about come to fruition, even though some people have laughed at my warnings for many years. Extreme nationalism where people are literally going, kill them all, put them in a camp. These are really strong negative thought forms. You don't even want to fight that. You want to step away from that. Take a lesson from Aikido. No, someone's extreme force coming at you. Let's say there's a brick wall behind you. Get out of the way, move out of the way. Circular, move out of the way, right? You don't necessarily have to go to the ground of that person or even hit them back. Get out of the way, right? Like a bull in a china shop, use their energy against them. So there's a lot of people out there on the internet that want to get us to fight with them. And I see other people doing it to others. And it goes to some dark places where people are calling for internment camps and the worst of the worst to happen to other human beings. And this abuse, you could say, of free speech is the very thing that's going to be used to further clamp down and control free speech. So I think that we're going to see a lot of things filtering into the underground. That's why, you can be a victim or you can back up your channel. You can start saving that information. Not only is this the first time that our ancestors had this ability, or that we have had this ability, when our ancestors did not. To come to people worldwide via the internet and while living off the grid, if one so chooses. Or some aren't living off the grid. You have some people that are just running around with their cell phone and they're doing a live stream and they're at the mall and they're like, I'm a Bitcoin millionaire. And they're wondering why people are looking at them funny. And no, it's not because you're filming yourself. It's because the crazy shit that you're saying. But that's another story. See, their cognitive function is so gone, they can't look at themselves from the observer perspective and go, yeah, it probably doesn't look good to brag about being a millionaire or being wealthy in a public place. But does the technology allow that person to do what his ancestors, right, were never able to do? And the answer is yes. So someone can get inflated with all that energy, being live all the time, live, and there is an energetic difference. I'll tell you that much. Between YouTube going live on the internet, which comes with a lot of weird energy, but also its own experience of being live in just your own community on Access TV, which I was doing before YouTube, and up until 2011, Love Portland came back, did it again. But it wasn't live. It was pre-recorded, and it was a different effect. Some viewers, right, for energy reasons, prefer to watch a show live because they're watching it live. But why does it need to be live? On a deeper level, subconsciously, why does that feel important? And it's the idea of pulling energy from that video and others that are watching it as it's going live, which is also part of the magic of lots of people watching the same TV show at the same time and talking about it at the same time. It has its own thought form. And I'm saying that's entirely negative. We can make that a positive. The idea that there of collective thought forms, or collective healing, or collective manifestation. But we want it to be a positive thing. We don't want it to be a negative thing. So that actually brings me to Coast AM. There's a lot of good things that I've learned from the radio show. There's also ways in which George Norrie mimics mainstream talking points, especially more so now, with regards to news and politics and the things that he reads off the rip and read. And how many times was Roger Stone on? That was telegraphed enough. I would have hoped that Norrie would have broken, a tight bond with Alex Jones and whatever's going on behind the scenes instead of it growing tighter. So there's something there. But as far as the guests, again, really great information. And then, oh my God, are you kidding me? It's like that toxic 10%. So I found a Coast to Coast archive page and downloaded a lot of the earlier shows that I, from the era that I remember really enjoying. Stuff before 2007. Stuff that inspired me around the time that I started my show and stuff that happened before I even started my show. Some of the older Art Bell programs from 2008, rather 1998, 97, 96, 95, 94. Also memories of my grandmother listening to Coast AM. But there were some episodes in which they were talking about targeted individuals in the United States. And George Norrie had some guests on from Robert Duncan, who claimed to have advanced knowledge of some of the stuff. And I thought the interview was really, really good. And I could tell George Norrie was steering away from how dark these technologies really are or were or will be that are being used on people in Middle Eastern countries today. It was alluded to, they danced around it, and then the topic was changed. But think about this. Those programs never even hypothesized, nor the guess, that there could be a supernatural effect causing those dream interferences, or the buzzing in the ears, or the things that people believe was causing this electronic mind control. And it's all just been put on the government. And even though we're aware of what little we really see as far as visual, when it comes to visible light, the arrogance of mankind, even on some of these programs that supposedly dealt with the paranormal. There's been a lot of shows about psychic attacks and things of that nature. And I'm not saying that electronic harassment doesn't exist. I'm saying that we are now a country with millions of people that believe that they have their own team of 50 to 100. I mean, let's get literal with the actual belief systems. That people in their community are secretly working for the government. I mean, we're not just talking about electronic harassment. We're talking about people that believe that members of their community are government employees that follow them around in cars. That's another big part of the gang stalking belief system. This is schizophrenia. A society could be taught to be schizophrenic by listening to people that are mentally ill, creating addictions to particular programs. In the case of Coast to Coast, and again, I said plenty of compliments so far about Coast to Coast, but if someone falls asleep, for example, the power of suggestibility, and they're being given disinformation about voices in their head, they could develop behavioral tendencies to where they believe that things that are actually spiritual attacks that they should be doing deeper inner shamanic work to clear themselves of, instead they're going to be playing victim with a psychosis that it's the government that they're powerless, and that technologies can be used with the push of a button to even kill them. And then people become afraid of their own emails. They literally become afraid of their own shadow. And I've seen this in so many of my audience members, but especially in Portland, Oregon, in the early 2000s. Many of them came across as the target individual gang stalking type. I'd meet people for coffee, they'd be twitching around like they're meth users. But they're not meth users. It's the conspiracy psychosis they're all out to get us caused an actual parasite infection upon their body. And they were being paranoid about normal people coming in for coffee because they were curious about this female's paranoid mannerisms. Remember, there was this one really paranoid female that would like to get together with me. Her name was Laura Spitzy, I think. Like to get together and talk conspiracies. But it never really went anywhere that was like, wow, relaxing. We had a good time. It was like, I guess I was her conspiracy buddy. So there were things I even went into, because I guess it can be really adrenaline, like with cocaine, right? Like just, So I think there were conspiracies she had about her boyfriend and her husband. Like they were part of a secret society. They were trying to entrap her. And 2 years later, like she's still with that dude. Now, does that make sense to be with someone that you've developed conspiracy theories about, but you stay with them 2 years later, but you get together with some other guy to, where gossip and bored housewives meets conspiracy theories? Now, that is a load of laundry I'd rather not wash. Right, but it's out there, folks. So discernment with content, yet an open mind. What does that mean? What does that mean? So there's going to be certain things that relate to you and certain things that don't. And go out and look for information. Don't let it be automated. So psychic protection. This month, they have a little button on YouTube that says filter. You type in psychic protection. You should see my videos in there. Other people's videos in there, spiritual warfare, Archon self-defense, Archon defense, right? Learn how to defend yourself against spiritual psychic attacks. And there's more and more videos, right, every single month that are being uploaded. And as I said before, I'm noticing more from those that are unfortunately still stuck in the ghetto. But because of the advent of this technology, they're using this technology for the Most High. And they're speaking about things that previously were just written about in books. Using technology our ancestors didn't have. Talking about stepping back from the ghetto mindset. When you try to rise in this world, people be trying to pull you down and toy with your ego and tell you that your voice does not matter. This is who you are. There's a lot of people out there. They will only communicate with you if they're able to put you down at this level. And if you talk about it and you speak against it, they're going to try to manipulate and isolate to play some game. You got to learn if you're going to be independent, you're going to be independent all the way. And in the end, you're going to end up with the best friends that you can ever imagine in 1,000 years, instead of those that would prefer that you be a certain way to them. See, it's not easy to speak the truth. But we can't go for what's easy. We can't necessarily allow ourselves to go for what's the most sugary. What's the tastiest. There's a reason there's so many billions that have been served at McDonald's. It's the taste buds. It's the trappings of the flesh. But what's really in that burger? Don't ask me what's in that burger. My burger good. And I'm not here to lie to you folks. I don't eat at McDonald's, right? But the taste of some of that stuff is good. A combination of those French fries and that soda and that burger that someone pays an overinflated amount for when they should have been eating something organic. But why did they eat that? They were trapped by their own senses. Okay, so as a human, you got sexual violent instincts within you. Your ass got to keep in check, whatever your ethnicity is. And you get on the internet and it's fight, fight, fight. Oh, they're coming at you. You better come at them first. You better get behind politicians that want to premeditate about bombing the world. They're coming after you. And this mass zombie movement, this mind virus is alive now. And it's not a matter of its potential be threatening in the future. It's threatening now. The wars are now. The people are being killed now. We're already living in that zombie apocalypse. If you don't have people alive today compassion about those millions of people overseas, those innocents that have been killed, then that's a zombie apocalypse. You're going to deal with zombies. If you're going to deal with the mentally ill and the people that have no compassion, and you are putting your own life at risk. I'm not joking. There's no telling what a human, what a man or a woman would allow to others after what they've allowed since 9/11. Even within the official story. And Osama bin Laden, but millions though? Even when you know that elements of radical Islam is being funded behind the scenes. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, it's a mass blood ritual to encourage the blood ritual to continue, right, is only to curse one's own self. I don't know how deep this goes. I'm just speculating, This is not professional therapy, folks, but this is deprogramming from that which they want you to believe. And what do they want you to believe? That you can do whatever you want and there is no consequences. That's why there's so much violence that's targeting our children. So much of this competition, so much of this combat. Mortal Kombat! Yeah, but what about the spiritual side of the martial arts? Can't we talk about that? And it seems like some of that is fading away. And some people curse the old world. It's really in the old world that we can find some of the greatest spiritual teachings. Maybe there's another reason some have been convinced to look at the old world as all oppression, all patriarchy, and all evil, and all men being evil, and even all women being evil, and all those other lies. No. Gender warfare is how they control us. So if someone's going to be on the internet, right, affected by some of these technologies, They're going to be led astray from the true knowledge if they get involved in that gender warfare. Okay, so one of the other things, talking about some things that I've learned about psychic warfare, if you're going to call out fake spiritual teachers on the internet, people are going to come after you. And they may even be against those people or those false truthers. But by being engaged in criticism and negativity, it creates an attraction. And to some people, they go on autopilot. And there's really a possession taking place. Again, when you have too much of a balance, it's about keeping your ratio, right? We need to have more negative thoughts, positive thoughts than negative thoughts, not more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. We need to be more exposed to the natural light outside the sunlight than the false light, the computer. Again, more positive thoughts than negative thoughts. More natural light, sunlight, than false light. And maintaining balance. There are some people that don't believe in such a thing as balance. They don't believe in such a thing as the sun even existing. We live in the day and age where many people believe the sun is a light bulb of sorts. It is a light, but it's more than a light. It's far more than a light. And it's far more than 3,000 miles away from the earth. So to be spiritually grounded and to not let a lot of the fearful news put you in a state of constant defensiveness, that's your number one state of defense. You know, being in a constant state of protection, to quote a recent podcast that I listened to from Cameron Day, puts one in a state of fear and apprehension and anxiety. And then you'll also hear people talk about subliminals, tones, energies, even some of the music. I mean, there's some music that I like listening to on this little MP3 player. And by the way, this little MP3 player will play talk shows and things of that nature for hours and hours and hours. And I would encourage you to start listening to things that are more motivational instead of depressing. You can even call it like a YouTube fast, where you step back from all of that negativity. But I'm listening to too much music through an artificial player, right? Without even good, decent speakers, or crappy, coming through crappy headphones. I'm going to be affected somewhat by that negative hurts. It's going to be causing more of a anxiety-like effect. So the thing is, while you're on the internet and while you're using the technology, you want to use it for the highest good. I talked a little bit about the the schizophrenic mindset. Politically, you want to stay away from those negative thought forms. And even arguing with people, they're going to be stuck in that mindset. So my first real experience with it was under Barack Obama, where they have the Obama sticker on one side and the coexist sticker on the other. And it's like, when Obama is continuing to drone strike these countries back into the Stone Age, why are they acting like they're all spiritual, like, oh, coexist, just like, there are people who act like they care about immigrants or refugees that are Democrats when they didn't really have a whole lot to say when their countries were being bombed back to the Stone Age. But just because the bombing back to the Stone Age has been going on for multiple decades, that doesn't mean that some people should just now accept it and be okay with it and not criticize it because their guy is now in office, Donald Trump. That schizophrenia is mixing that up with liberty, that up with being anti-Federal Reserve, that up with being anti-war, and then I actually do happen to have an audio recording, apparently, of AMTV making Donald Trump out to be a 9/11 truther, which is absolute propaganda. No wonder why he deleted that from his channel. Because Donald Trump is not a 9/11 truther. That was a lie. That was psychic warfare. But he's not an idiot. He's trying to cover up his tracks. But just because he's not an idiot, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's smart. I just want to say really briefly, here's a mantra for you. When you're dealing with poltergeist, demons, archons. I'm not afraid of you. And I'm not afraid of your master, for you are a slave. It is you who are on the run. It is you who are afraid. I rebuke your implant, your mind, your consciousness. Or I refuse. And see, how many people take the time throughout their day to take a deep breath and clear their energy and clear out their head and to realize that there is ongoing psychic warfare on the internet. Now, if you have no discernment or no sixth sense that you've cultivated on your own to access your own truth, to where you have an alarm system that goes, wrong, back up, and sometimes you may not know until you get a chance to talk to someone, interview someone, and say a Skype interview. So, there's some reasons why I haven't talked to people more than once. There's one person that I interviewed, and I remember he was recommending someone else. And I wasn't going to him for personal advice or help. I wanted another perspective on this YouTube channel on psychic protection. And instead, it seemed like, there's a moment there, at least in one of the, at least for a second, that seemed like an infomercial for someone else's PDF. And there was something about her information and her PDF that didn't seem right to me with regards to certain claims that she had the ability to clear out particular spiritual parasites. If you don't know who you're dealing with, and people can also pop up out of nowhere to start leading you astray, kind of like, hey, I know this guy that you might want to date, and then it turns out to be a nightmare, or vice versa. I know this girl who you might want to date. There are people out there that might manifest in our lives, just go like, and give us the wrong direction. Not just people, right, that are really popular out there in the media and those false spiritual teachers, but people that you don't even know. So I noticed this on Facebook after I interviewed that guy. This person's popping up recommending this lady. And another friend of mine that I trust to have a little bit more intuition with regards to some of these things looked at it and came back saying this seems like something that would end up implanting someone. And there's a lot of people out there, Romp is one of them, others, where people are following someone that they believe to have Messiana-like characteristics, that their bloodline, kind of like the way Alfred Weber looks at Laura Eisenhower and others, a little bit too much of a complementary nature to their physical nature. And within that, they're still going by the matrix itself and the illusions of separation based on ethnicity, not the actual spark of one's soul. So it's not based on DNA or even your family per se. It's the soul essence inside you. But there are other people, that are stuck somewhere else. But I bring this up to let you know that I do think that there could be spiritual consequences for putting your faith and trust in the wrong person. And someone could say, oh, but she's such a beautiful woman. And she has such a sexy voice. And it's like that, again, seen from The Matrix, the woman in the red dress. People need to stop being so, and that includes women as well. That's one thing you'll see at a strip club where women are dancing. Not just men, but women. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, visit Portland, Oregon sometime. There's something wired into both women and men. Both men and women. That worships the naked female torso, giver of life. But just because the female is the provider of life doesn't mean that these forms of perceived nature worship, goddess worship, are the most enlightened. It's oftentimes the opposite, very much fallen, to where we're worshiping thus then the flesh and our breasts, and for some penises and other bodily members. And I'm just fairly turned off by modern society and modern people and how far they've fallen. So looking at the internet, again, start looking at it as a buffet. But even worse than McDonald's food, some of that stuff can actually make you sick to the point where you're puking in the toilet and you're not able to eat again for a long, long time. What if there were certain things that you were exposed to, and maybe you have been exposed to those things? where you were afraid to go outside, or you became afraid of people from a certain part of the world, or you became afraid of people from your own community, or you became very angry with your own city and started looking at everybody in your own region in a particular negative light, which would also be bad, to have that negative psychic attack energy and not even realize that you're psychically attacking others. Because if you encourage people to attack others with their minds on the internet, or to become, obsessed with people on the internet, or to troll, that energy comes back and it can whack you really, really hard, even if you think you're doing the right thing by criticizing fake spiritual teachers on the internet. Weird stuff can happen. Really weird stuff can happen. I think about all the different people and things I tried to expose last year, right? And how it created these weird type of matrix effects by even doing that. So I've come to learn a little bit of wisdom to keep it less about the people and the personalities, calling people out and that negativity, and keep it more about what we don't want to do ourselves. Okay, so we're starting to understand from the last few decades what mental illness looks like, because aspects of our society are falling apart. And we're seeing some people fall apart before our very eyes on YouTube. What do we have to do for ourselves? Let's cover up, continue some of the main points. So social media, psychic vampires, stay away from lusting off people on social media. You're going to see that guy or that girl in some cases, where it might as well be a reptilian. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at my vagina, right? And it's not a fake profile. It's a real person. Or someone be like, I remember one girl was like, tell me where you would like to be with me. And it's like, me as a mammalian in male Homo sapien form recognizes that in a certain matrix reality, she's prime real estate. But see, I don't want to be in that lower fallen state of along with 50 other men. That's kind of like, imagine yourself being a bouncer at a strip club with a bunch of horny men with erections. Which club would you rather work at if you were running security? I don't think it'd be that club. You know what I'm saying? But hey, some people like that. They want to get down and dirty. There's a lot you can learn from Beetlejuice, right? So when you're looking at certain things and you're looking at, certain figures out there, and they're talking about certain deities and they're saying certain names on the radio, and I'm not going to get into mentioning names, but there's someone in Portland that would do a lot of that, and he would play a lot of supernatural stuff that sounded like screams from ghosts or screams from space. And that person ended up dealing with some really weird energy. And I think he got really deep into the fake news end of things in recent years. And it's really, really sad to see his last few years being spent spinning and creating more fear as he dies of cancer. That's horrible that he can't see his own predicament. So when people are calling out particular deities by name, they need to remain super spiritual, or weird stuff can start happening. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Remember that? Remember how in that movie they were trying to stop people from saying his name more than once? That's a metaphor for an archon type deity, right? That offers its service, or a jinn, if you will, in the world of Islam. Like Aladdin, like rub a genie and a jinn comes out of the bottle. And how is this different than those people that think that they have worked with the ascended masters, that have actually been working with these fallen spirits, these archons, these demons that are leading mankind astray? So you've also heard the quote from even people that have become the abyss, like Alex Jones: be careful in gazing in the abyss lest you become the abyss. So if you're just focused on predators and predator consciousness, then that's going to be reflecting back to you, or those intelligences. So, and I'm glad that I remember to say this. So when it comes to then connecting with the guides, they're there to serve us. They come from the divine, that aren't there to deceive us, but the true guardian spirits, or guardian angels, as they're also known in our culture, guardian angels, and things of that nature. We need to be as focused on that, because it isn't just a world of spiritual parasites and humans. On another level, behind the scenes, there are forces of nature, forces of the Creator working through nature that are working on our behalf, that have our back. But they don't necessarily make themselves known and interfere in our lives in the same way that the archonic demonic forces and their minions, the humans on earth that are susceptible to their programming and their possession, hijack. And we see it all the time now in today's day and age. So it's more than just, and we have to use these terms very carefully and understand what we're dealing with. Because when you're dealing with those spiritual forces, they're going to be looking for vulnerabilities. It's not a matter of, and that's another thing I want to put out there, fighting them in terms of warfare. Psychic defense doesn't necessarily mean warfare. Defending yourself against other people's psychic attacks or, your own negative thought forms doesn't necessarily have to be, and probably shouldn't, a violent or a negative thing. That type of reaction, in some cases, can only energize and excite that which seems to be your oppressor. And they may not even be, and usually are not, consciously aware of it, but the archonic forces pulling their strings, the spiritual hidden hand certainly does. So many don't know if their thoughts are not their own, and they probably should. To doubt, as I said, is to be in ego, is to be in fear. A lot of the New Age groups, I believe, are gray fronts. A lot of the ones that were in operation in the 1980s. So there's a lot of people that have been led astray, and have been taught this the false spirituality. I've got so much stuff to get into, but I want to conclude by encouraging you to be like Morpheus in that famous scene from The Matrix. A lot of the disinformation is geared towards breaking you, right? And convincing you to be afraid of breathing. Be afraid of connecting to spirituality. Be afraid of dying. Be afraid of all these things, right? Be afraid of being who you are. Be afraid of speaking your mind. Be afraid of showing your eyes. Be afraid to not be anonymous. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Right? But we need to be more like Morpheus and break that programming, because I see these thought forms and these mass ways of thinking and behaving as something that we need to rise above. Breaking the codes of the Matrix. Peeling back the layers of the onion and revealing the truth that was always there. We just had to develop the ability to see through the veil. And once we do, then we have to start discerning. Because once we start looking through that veil, ladies and gentlemen, oh my God, there's a lot out there. So discernment, self-discipline, focus, all these are necessary attributes to a modern day conscious human being. We are now at a time, I hope you've enjoyed, right, this particular video. If you're new, please subscribe, please like, please share this throughout the internet. Until next time, I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you, the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within.